Ripped off, out of pocket, short-changed. No one likes getting a bad deal.
But knowing who to trust can be tough.
This company was just giving me the runaround.
So when your money is under threat and you think you've lost out, Off Britain is here to help.
We'll be investigating the companies that you say are letting you down.
I was so angry. They took away a lot from me.
And we're taking on the scammers who are causing heartache and misery.
I was such a mess. Somebody'd just taken all my life savings out of my account.
So whether it's a mistake that's left you out of pocket or a blatant rip-off, we're here to help you find out what you can do about it. This is Off Britain.
Hello and welcome once again to Off Britain. I hope you know that we are always on your side when the service you receive was a long way from what you expected or indeed what you believe you paid for.
Now, coming up today, the big-name hire car company whose extra insurance didn't stretch to rescuing one young family when they broke down in the Irish countryside.
I said, I can't leave people like that on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere with a 9-month-old baby. You just don't expect to be treated like that, not in this day and age.
If you're planning to hire a car anytime soon, we'll be revealing the policy exclusions that could actually seriously trip you up.
Plus, the families who thought their parents had done everything they could to secure their financial future, only to discover after their parents had died that the reality was very different. We've got the latest on a devastating £44 million scandal affecting thousands of families.
And in our advice clinic, we're helping one man who's facing £1,700 of parking fines and fending off debt collectors for parking in a space that he's actually got a permit to use. Well, sounds a simple case, but as I think we know, the course of justice rarely runs smooth. So Solicitor Gary Rycroft is here to explain what your rights really are.
But first today, to home insurance. Now, it's supposed to be there when things go wrong and help you get back to normal as quickly as possible. And there's a whole host of steps an insurer has to take when you make a claim.
But even when an insurer does everything it's obliged to, sometimes it's not what really makes the difference. As the mother in our first film today discovered, a little more common sense and compassion would have transformed life for her family when they needed it most.
It was a nice day, having a chat with the girls. How was your day? What did you do?
A normal weekday afternoon in May 2023. As usual, Sabrina Tobacco has just picked up her 2 young daughters from school, when suddenly her life was turned upside down.
By the time we reached there, I saw the massive smoke coming from my sheds.
A fire had started in the garden shed, but by the time the fire service had arrived, it had spread.
I felt scared, terrified. I didn't know how much damage was inside the house. I still got nightmares when I remember that scene of the fire and the girls being terrified.
The fire was caused by a faulty tumble dryer, and it resulted in extensive damage to their home, especially to their son Daniel's bedroom. It was clear they were going to need somewhere else to stay. So Sabrina called her home insurer, NatWest.
I said, I don't have anywhere to go. I said, the most important thing is that bear in mind, I've got a child with a disability. He's in a wheelchair and he's need 24/7 care.
Sabrina and Daniel spent the night in hospital. And the next day, the insurer got in touch with news of a ground floor apartment where the family could stay until the home was repaired. But when they got there, it was not as promised.
It turned out to be on the 5th floor. There was only one lift. It's very hard to get in and out of the wheelchair. Couldn't shower him because he was far too small. He didn't have a bath, just a shower.
Over the years, Sabrina has adapted her home to meet Daniel's needs, with space to maneuver his wheelchair and a hoist from his bed to the shower. But their temporary accommodation had none of these modifications. And Sabrina says that when she asked NatWest to find something more suitable, she was advised to search for properties herself. But that proved almost impossible.
As soon as I called, they said, we're sorry, somebody put the deposit down. It's gone. What can I do? And I kept looking and looking and looking. Every single day I was looking for properties.
The longer Sabrina was stuck in a fifth-floor flat, the more desperate she became to get her own house repaired. But progress on that front was frustratingly slow.
All the time, almost every day on the phone, chasing them. I said, how long this chase gonna go? Because I cannot cope anymore. I'm physically and mentally tired.
Almost 2 months after the fire, work still hadn't begun to repair the family home. But Sabrina did find a new temporary home. It was better than a fifth-floor flat, but it still was a massive challenge.
I found this place, which is a 3-bedroom bungalow. Ooh, goodness me, Daniel. What? But the corridor is small, the bathroom is quite small. I cannot put any hoisting or anything to help him out.
Now that means, unable to bathe Daniel in the tiny, tiny bathroom, Sabrina has to carry her 14-year-old son to the garage, which breaks my heart just to watch.
This is one of his mattresses. So this has to go lie down on the floor. For him to lie down here with a bucket with warm water, shower him here, dry out, try to dress him up, and back to the lifting him, holding him in my arm, which is not easy. Sometimes I feel like, am I failing to do my job as a mother? Have I done enough for my son? Sorry.
By now, the family had been out of their home for 3 months. So Sabrina decided to take matters into her own hands and find her own builder to speed up the process.
I don't have the time to wait for 3 to 4 months. I need to get in the house. I cannot cope anymore in this property with my son.
Sabrina asked her insurer for a cash settlement so that she could use her own contractors, and it agreed. So 4 months after the fire, work finally began, and Sabrina started to see an end to their nightmare.
It feels so wonderful thinking I'm going to be home soon. Hopefully everything will go back to normal and feel great and fantastic the way it was before. Are you looking forward to go to your house? What are you looking forward about it?
Telly.
You're on telly. Where?
My
In your room, yeah?
Yeah.
But the journey to get here has been incredibly stressful, and Sabrina feels that NatWest just didn't do enough to help her meet Daniel's day-to-day needs.
My case hasn't been handled well at all. The cases like me have to be more prioritized. We're not asking for luxurious house. We're asking for the disabled person to meet his needs, to make life easier for that person.
Well, you might have to forgive us today if it's a bit emotional about that. Martin James, one of our consumer experts, is watching it with me, and Sabrina herself actually joins us. So, Sabrina, welcome to the programme. We have been very touched, both Martin and myself, by your story. So how are you coping at the moment? How do you feel?
I mean, it took the last 6 months, it was really, really hard. It's not just for me, for my family as well, because I've got other 2 children.
It struck me, and I think Martin as well, that there were 2 big things that you needed from your insurance company. First of all, they should have found you suitable accommodation. And the second was to fix your house as quickly as possible because of your needs. Why did you have to do so much pushing yourself?
Because I don't think they were interested what I went through. I had sleepless nights. I was going to bed 12 o'clock, waking up 3 o'clock in the morning, sitting in a chair, crying and thinking to myself, what next step should I do? Which door should I knock for help? I don't understand how to explain to these people the situation I'm in.
Martin, I'm kind of out of words with frustration with this whole situation. What do you think the insurance company should have done?
Well, insurance is there to protect you in situations like this where things go wrong. Insurance companies should be aware of any specific needs that people have and should prioritise people where appropriate as well. Now, when it comes to damage to your property, the insurance company should still be able to give you an estimate of the amount of time it's going to take to repair that property. Now, even if it's going to be quite a length of time, at least Sabrina and Daniel Daniel and her family would have known there was a set period of time that they had to get through. And that would have made it easier to negotiate with the insurance company to actually help Daniel with his needs.
Why did Sabrina have to ask questions? Why did she have to get builders and quotes and things?
Well, insurance companies need to use their imaginations. It's not just about finding suitable, accessible accommodation, it's also about finding and making appropriate changes that will make people's lives easier. So I'd like to see, you know, maybe a bit of creativity and maybe finding ways that, you know, Sabrina and Daniel could have found suitable facilities where Daniel could have been bathed. You know, that could have been through a hotel, it could have been through, you know, a local gym. And I just want to know, Sabrina, did the insurance company do anything like that?
No. They never mentioned it. They never asked, is there anything you need? Nothing at all.
Right. Well, there you have it. And,
in a word.
Yeah, and that's a real concern to me.
When we spoke to UK Insurance, who's the underwriter for NatWest home insurance policies, it told us that it appreciates that this was an extremely difficult time for Sabrina's family and said it was in regular contact with Sabrina throughout the claim. UK Insurance expressed regret that despite talking to 16 property rental companies, it took far longer than it wanted to find accommodation that met the family's needs. The firm said it was aware that a hotel would not be suitable due to the lack of cooking facilities, so a service department was agreed upon. And while UK Insurance said it understood that Daniel was being bathed at school, Sabrina said this was because she had no other options. When Sabrina had found a suitable property, UK Insurance said it signed the tenancy agreement and made a welfare call to confirm the family was settling in. UK Insurance said it had made it clear that restoring the house after the fire would be a lengthy process, adding that the full scope of the work was not apparent until a great deal of preparation had taken place. However, I am so pleased to say that UK Insurance paid the costs in full, along with a £1,000 gesture of goodwill, and the family has now moved back into their own home. Sabrina, if I could just ask you what that feeling was like for you and Daniel to move back into your home.
Oh, he was so relaxed because he had his own bed. He has his wet room next to him. We've got the hoisting before he moved in the house, so I can easily lift him in and out from the bed and the shower. Even showering him now is much easier than lying down on the floor. It's completely different story than what we went through.
Well, Sabrina, you know, we want to thank you very much indeed for joining us today, and everybody in our studio want to wish you and Daniel and your other children well. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, Martin, I just want to finish with your good self. What would you say to people taking out insurance policies? You know, how much information do you have to give them up front to explain your situation and the emergency that they need to introduce?
Well, with any kind of insurance contracts, Gloria, you have to tell the insurer about key things that are important. Now, that's particularly important if somebody could be considered to be more vulnerable or have a disability. The insurance company should have that information on file and should occasionally remind you as well to say, have you had any modifications to the property? Is there anything that we need to know about? All of these things matter because insurance is about planning for the worst so people don't have to experience situations like this.
Martin, thank you very much for your advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sabrina's family experienced firsthand just how hard it can be to find accessible accommodation in an emergency. But that in itself is indicative of a bigger problem: the all-round shortage of accessible homes to rent.
Well, I'm joined now by campaigner Mikey Earhart from Disability Rights UK. Mikey, I think that interview and that film displayed very graphically the kind of problems that Sabrina had in finding suitable accommodation. Now, is that because there just isn't enough accessible accommodation in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, we're in a bit of a crisis scenario now with the just sheer lack of affordable and accessible housing across the country. So we're at a breaking point, really. There is not suitable, safe housing out there. And so cases like Sabrina and Daniel's are becoming more and more common. I think predominantly it's an issue of how we've regulated the housing sector over the last 20, 30 years. We've never really asked developers to build accessible housing. That's changing now, but like catching up takes a very long time. You can't build houses overnight. And so we're really stuck with the housing stock that we built 10, 20, 30 years ago, which weren't built to the same sort of specifications without disabled people in mind.
So how often are you getting people coming asking for assistance to find accommodation?
Honestly, too often to count. It's something that comes in every day. Every time I check my inbox, there's a new person saying, can you help me with a housing problem? New stats show that 139,000 children, like Daniel, are now living in temporary accommodation in the United Kingdom.
One final question. Is it going to get any better?
I hope so. We've been working really hard at DRUK to ensure that a lot of the changes that your viewers might have seen be introduced through regulation over the last year really keep disabled people at their heart, and that our issues are not separated off from everyone else's. Disabled people, non-disabled people, we all have a right to warm, safe, accessible houses, and we hope that that change will come faster.
Mikey, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
So much, Angela.
When we put Mikey's points to the Government Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, it told us that it is committed to raising minimum accessibility standards to ensure that all new homes in England are built with disabled people in mind. And that it's invested more than £5.4 billion since 2010, delivering almost 500,000 grants to modify homes to meet the needs of disabled residents.
Now time for our advice clinic, where our experts are standing by to help tackle the problems causing you all sorts of headaches. Well, with me in the advice clinic today is our Chief Brief Solicitor, Gary Rycroft. Lovely to have you with us. And we're joined by James, who actually lives in London but is Zooming us from New York. Hi, James.
Good morning.
Now, James, take us through what's happened.
Yeah, so I've recently moved in with my girlfriend, and by chance, I'm still friends with some old housemates, and they let me know that I'd had about 30 letters come through to my old address. Opening the letters, I had 10 parking fines for the property that I lived in with my girlfriend. I had a designated bay with a permit. I had a fob, which allows entry into 2 gates, and this was all paid for. With the parking company, they weren't allowing me to appeal because the time since the letters have arrived was over 28 days. They passed me straight on to the debt collection agency. So I've been unable to appeal, which I think is very unfair.
So, James, how much money are we talking about here?
Well, the initial tickets were costed £100, and if you pay within 2 weeks, it goes down to 60. However, now with 2 or 3 letters each from the parking company and the debt recovery agency are asking for £170 per ticket. So that's £1,700.
Ooh, that's a lot, isn't it?
A lot.
When James moved house, he was certain he'd changed his address on the car's ownership records and on his driving licence, but somehow the fines still made it to his old address. So, Gary, should these PCNs have ever been issued?
No, they shouldn't. At the end of the day, I think it's completely wrong of this company to be issuing you with threatening letters. These, by the way, are not fines. James, you did call them fines, but to be absolutely correct about it, they are invoices. So fines are issued by public bodies like the local authority, by traffic wardens. It's not a fine. It is the landowner saying, you've used my land, please pay for it, which of course is perfectly reasonable. But James's defence here is that he has paid for it because he had the fob, he had the permit. So I don't actually see where they're going to go with this case, because although they've been sending letters to the wrong address, fundamentally there isn't a debt.
Well, James, we actually picked all this up with the company that issued the PCNs, and it stressed the importance of keeping your address up to date on both your licence and the vehicle logbook. And it maintained that all correspondence was sent to the address held by the DVLA as the address for your vehicle. It has, however, said that it will allow you to appeal the PCNs. So what do you make of that, James?
That'd be great. As I said, I've been unable to appeal so far. If they're allowing me to appeal now, that'd be fantastic.
And Gary, what do you make of the fact that they've said what they've said?
Well, I would actually dispute use of the word appeal, because what are you appealing? They haven't got a judgment or debt against you. We need to go right back to basics. You need to say to the debt recovery company, James, that actually you want to speak to the private parking company and they've got to prove their case, because in my view, you've got a full defence. You paid for the parking.
So I think, James, the message is from Gary, fight, 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 correct?
Absolutely right.
So, James, are you up for the fight?
Yes, definitely. I'll continue as long as I can.
Well, thank you, James, very much, and good luck with it, and let us know what happens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks, Gary.
I love it, because there are few experts who get as worked up about a parking story as Gary Rycroft. But, you know, it's not just Gary whose heart accelerates a bit when the words parking charge are mentioned. You do as well, because we get emails daily with your stories of parking predicaments, like Darminder Jassal, who says that he felt punished for a glitch in the ticket machine after receiving a parking charge for not verifying his ticket. Darminder, however, was adamant that he had verified it.
Well, Ellie Samways says that she got a PCN for pulling onto a petrol station forecourt for 2 minutes while she was just finding her bearings when she got lost. Seems a bit mean to me.
It's ridiculous. But thank you, of course, to everybody for writing in on that particular subject, and indeed the huge range of subjects that you tell us about every single day. Whether you've got a gripe you want to air or a problem you'd like the experts in our advice clinic to tackle, please let us know. And this is how you do it. Rip Off Britain at bbc.co.uk, or you'll always find us on Facebook, where we're BBC Rip Off Britain.
And of course, you can always write to us at Rip Off Britain. We are Rip Off Britain, BBC Media City UK, Salford, M50 2BH. But we always say this, please remember not to enclose any original documents because we're not able to return them. And however you choose to get in touch, please do include your phone number so that someone from the Rip Off team can give you a call and help to tackle your problem.
Now, from parking to driving. If you've ever hired a car, think back to that time when you were standing at the desk, collecting your keys and signing all those documents. At the back of your mind, did you have a niggling little worry that somewhere in the T's and C's there might be a clause that could come back to bite you if something went wrong? Yep. Well, buckle up your seatbelts because, as we're about to find out, those fears might be very well founded.
Ireland, rolling countryside, beautiful beaches, miles of winding footpaths, and the perfect place to celebrate a birthday. Or so thought Kerry Mulvanity from Romford.
We was only away for 4 days for my daughter's 30th, so it was a special time.
It was a real family affair. Kerry's husband James, daughter Charlotte and her husband Andrew, along with 9-month-old baby Bonnie, flew into Knock in the west of Ireland. And there was only one choice when it came to exploring Ireland during their mini-break.
We just thought it'd be easy to hire a car for the whole 4 days we were going to be there because it meant we could get about places.
Faced with an array of big hire car brands, Kerry and James decided budget looked just the ticket.
They were pretty competitive and had the size we needed because we needed to hire a car seat for the baby, and so we just went with them.
They paid £519 for a 4-day hire, which included an extra £30 fee for cross-border insurance since they were planning to visit Belfast, and they set off on their adventures. All was running smoothly until 2 days in, when a problem developed over the border in Northern Ireland on the busy A4.
My husband was having a bit of trouble with the gears, and he was convinced it was the clutch had gone. Thank God we literally went a few hundred yards and there was a lay-by and we could go into the lay-by.
Thankfully, James managed to pull over before the car came to a standstill, but there was nowhere to shelter.
We were in a very vulnerable position here on a busy main road with no pathway. We had no idea where we were. But the main point was it's what was going to happen with regards to the baby.
Mightily relieved that they'd taken out that cross-border breakdown cover, Kerry got straight on the phone to the recovery service that Budget had an agreement with.
But when we contacted them, they turned around and said, well, it sounds like the clutch. This is not going to be repairable on the side of the road, so we can come and collect the car. And we said, well, what about the passengers? And they said, Budget haven't got that sort of policy with them. Yeah, we was really worried. We're in the middle of nowhere. You know, you're looking around you, it's all fields, and you're told, sorry, but you've got to find your own way home.
Kerry's next call was to Budget, but even when she explained that they had a baby with them, Kerry says she was told there was nothing the car hire firm could do.
I said, that's ridiculous. So you can't leave people like that on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere with a 9-month-old baby.
With no choice but to fend for themselves, the family eventually managed to get help from a local farmer who called them a taxi.
I just cannot believe that they can leave people like that and not have anything in place to help. You just don't expect to be treated like that, not in this day and age.
The family had paid for roadside assistance, but the contract they signed didn't detail the limitations. It takes a dig into Budget's website to realise that it covers the car, but not the passengers, and there's the rub. When it comes to car hire and small print, the two go hand in hand. The notorious T's and C's also caught out Deborah Aloesh from Essex. She and her former husband Mirzak had hired a van from Enterprise to help Deborah's daughter Louisa move into a flat.
We booked the van online. The form is pre-ticked with lots of things, so we left the damage waiver because we wanted the cover to protect us from many eventualities.
But things started to go awry when they took a wrong turn.
They got slightly lost. The sat-nav took them through a bridge that was too low for the van, and the height restrictors scratched the top of the van.
It was a schoolboy error. Mirzak had misjudged the height, but they were confident that they were covered by that damage waiver. And, at first, the Enterprise staff believed that to be the case too.
So, on return to the office, we told the staff what had happened. They went out and viewed the van, and they said, so you're covered for that, pay the £250 excess, and that is the end of the matter.
Deborah didn't realise that Enterprise would now send the van off to have the damage independently inspected. And 3 months later, she was sent the inspection report.
It has been decided not to repair the vehicle. The vehicle is not roadworthy as the structural integrity has been compromised.
Now, Enterprise said Deborah and her ex-husband were liable for the total cost of the van, more than £6,300, and payment was being demanded within 14 days.
It was totally out of the blue, and there was nothing I could do about it.
When she asked Enterprise why this wasn't all covered by the damage waiver, she discovered the explanation was there in the small print. Specifically, Section 3, Subsection C, Subsection 15 of the Terms and Conditions. It says, the vehicle must not be used to drive under a barrier lower than the overhead clearance of the vehicle. And that invalidated any damage waiver.
It was a shock. We didn't have that money to pay it. And then they just proceeded just to continuously write and call me.
After some wrangling, Deborah and Mirzak have now agreed to pay off the debt in instalments of £40 a month.
The amount of money that we've settled on means that it's going to take more than 12 years to pay it back. It's been very stressful, the whole episode.
When we spoke to Enterprise about Deborah's case, it told us that when a vehicle is returned damaged, its branch staff aren't qualified to assess the damage, so it's sent to an independent body shop to be evaluated. Now, that's a process that would have been explained when Deborah returned the van.
Enterprise said that independent inspection confirmed that the cause of the damage breached its terms and conditions, which clearly state that the renter may be liable for damage caused by driving under a barrier which is lower than the vehicle itself, and as such, it is not covered by the excess that Deborah paid. Enterprise also pointed out that when Deborah took her case to the industry's independent dispute resolution service, it agreed with the company's decision.
As for Kerry's case, Budget told us that it fell short of the high standards that its customers expect or deserve, adding that it had apologised to Kerry and her family, issued a further refund, and will be taking steps to avoid such a situation happening again.
Well, back with me is legal eagle Gary Rycroft and motoring expert Abigail Andre. Abigail, I think when you're hiring a car, it can often feel as if all the terms are stacked against you and in favour of the company. So what is the key information that you really ought to check?
Well, there's a lot. And I think the main thing is to be prepared and do your homework before you go out and hire something. So have a look on Trustpilot, have a look on Google, and see what their customers are saying about them. Don't just look at the price. I would look at things like the terms and conditions. I think that's really important. Do you understand it all? Anything that you don't understand, ask them. It's better to be safe than sorry and find out what something means when you really wish that you knew before.
Yeah. And when it comes to the excess, what should you be looking out for?
You should be looking for how much is the excess, and do you have to keep paying that? Do you have to pay for the excess each time there's a problem with the car? Or is there something like a damage waiver where that covers all of those things? And then what are the terms of that damage waiver?
And what about at the actual moment where you've got the keys in your hand or you're just about to take the keys? Are there other sort of checks and things you should be doing?
I would always have a look round the vehicle. Any damage that you see should be noted by the person who's doing the handover to you, but also make sure you make your own notes and take pictures. So take pictures of all of the car or van, even if you don't see any damage, just so that you know what condition you picked it up in, and the interior as well.
Gary, if you feel you've been thoroughly let down by your car hire company, is there anybody you can actually turn to, anybody?
Hopefully your car hire company will be part of the British Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association, the BVRLA, and they do have an alternative dispute resolution service. So that's the first port of call, is to go there and actually put your case to them, because they will look at very practical things, like if you're hiring a van, were you told that it was higher than normal? I know these things are obvious, but actually I think the companies have a duty of care to their customers to actually run through all of that thing. And so the evidence you can give about whether that happened or not will be really helpful.
A lot to be thought about, obviously, when you're hiring a car or a van. Thank you both very much.
Now to a story to which we've been paying very close attention since we first covered it back in 2022. It all revolves around a carefully considered decision made by thousands of people in an attempt to protect their family's financial future. Unfortunately, years later, their descendants have learnt that the promises that the protection was based on have actually been broken. Now, the last time I met some of those families, the future looked decidedly bleak, but as I'll find out shortly, there may now be a glimmer of hope for a solution. But first, here's a reminder of that original story.
Jane Atkin and Ian Nightingale's parents, George and Margaret, lived in this house in Ilkeston, Derbyshire, for almost 3 decades, always keeping an eye on the future.
Jane?
Yes?
Ian?
Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
How are
I'm
you?
Angela. This is a lovely photograph. Is it your mum and dad?
It is, yeah, on their honeymoon. So yesterday would have been their 70th wedding anniversary.
Ah.
After George died in 2018, their home became Margaret's pride and joy, until she too passed away in December 2021.
Does it feel, emotionally difficult, though, to come into the house and be here today?
Yeah. It's a strange feeling, because I'm not used to looking through the window and she's sitting in the chair.
But it had been made immeasurably harder by the situation in which Jane and Ian found themselves. Despite Margaret leaving the house to them both, they were in a battle to gain control of it. Ironically, it was all thanks to a decision their parents made back in 2011 to make sure that their children inherited all their estate.
Well, my parents went to the Building Society one day. They had a promotion on, this is a good thing to protect your children's inheritance against being used for care fees. So, of course, my parents thought, very good idea. We trust the Building Society. So they then sort of said, yes, we've set up a trust.
The Building Society introduced them to a company which, for £3,750, would put their savings and assets into a trust, arrangements which they believed couldn't be taken into account when local authorities calculate what proportion of care home fees a family must shoulder. And after that, they didn't think very much about it for years. By late 2021, 3 years after George had died, Margaret was suffering with dementia. Worried she might need long-term care, Ian and Jane began looking into how to get the trust to cover the costs.
My mum went in hospital. I found these documents that said trust.
Reading through them, something didn't add up. Not only was it unclear how the trust would have helped with any care costs, they also showed that the company administering the trust had become a co-owner of Margaret's home.
I don't believe my parents fully understood what they were signing. They go to a reputable organisation that says, we're promoting this, so they think, OK, that must be good. It must be right because it's legal.
The word trust gave them that confidence,
exactly.
you think?
The word trust was paramount, I think, in that.
The agreement meant Jane and Ian could do nothing with the house without the trust's say-so. But in 2018, the administration of the trust was taken over by a firm called the Phillips Trust Corporation. And Ian told us that getting in touch with the company when he and Jane wanted to sell the house was all but impossible. Those are the things you don't expect, presumably, from people who are trustees, basically, of your inheritance.
Yeah. This is it, yeah. We thought it'd just go all smooth, didn't we? Yeah.
Did you assume, and did your parents assume, do you think, that they were looking after your inheritance?
100%.
100%, yeah. They'd both be horrified if they knew it was like this, wouldn't they, Mum and Dad?
Because Phillips Trust Corporation wasn't authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority, customers couldn't turn to it for help. But serious concerns were being raised about the state of the firm's financial standing. And in April 2022, Phillips Trust Corporation called in the administrators. When we spoke to those administrators, they told us that they're working with all clients of the Phillips Trust Corporation and that they will keep clients informed about the progress of distributing what they're owed, as well as providing updates on the release of the £44 million of investment in bonds that were made by the company, a process that's expected to continue to late 2025. During 2023, attention also began to fall on the building societies that originally introduced customers to the idea of a trust, and some called for them to pay compensation. So years after people like Margaret and George made moves that they thought would secure their family's financial future, their intention might finally be about to come good. Well, joining me now to discuss the ongoing saga of the Phillips Trust Corporation is Mark Bishop from the Transparency Task Force. Now, they've been investigating the firm on behalf of the people who are affected. Mark, I'll come to you in just a moment, but first, we're being joined from Devon by Ian, whom we saw in the film there. And Ian, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, when I last saw you, the Phillips Trust Partnership was named on the deeds of your mum's house, and they had a controlling interest on it. But things have changed since then, haven't they? What have you actually managed to achieve?
They have, and I mean, we were very fortunate that using an independent solicitor, we managed to get the house back in my sister and my own name, and then we finally were able to sell the house. So that was some sort of closure.
Ian, I know you started a Facebook group because there are people who are known to have been caught up in the fallout of the Phillips Trust. Are you still hearing from others who are, like you, managing to break free?
Yes, and I mean, probably every day, every couple of days, there's a message on there, people saying, we finally managed to get the houses back in our own name. And when we started it just sort of 2 years ago now, we had obviously 1 or 2 people. And then when your program went out, it got more and more interesting people.
So I'm going to come to Mark in the studio now because the premise on which these trusts were sold were actually untrue from the beginning, being told that you're not going to have to lose money on your property, you can leave it to your children, it's not going to have to go towards your care costs. All of these things were untrue, weren't they?
Exactly. The premise that one can avoid care home fees or inheritance tax by putting a property in a trust is not the case. The government's not foolish. They've put in place anti-avoidance measures. They've been there for years.
So, Mark, are you saying that the building societies that were involved in this scheme have a moral responsibility to actually do something for the victims in this case?
Absolutely, Angela. I think they have a total responsibility because they introduced the whole thing to their customers. Their customers had not been made those representations about the benefits of trust that were untrue. There's no way they would have taken out trusts. Episodes like this would cause huge amounts of harm and distress to these people.
Now, we would automatically assume that the Financial Conduct Authority would be the people getting involved here. Why could they not get involved?
Right. So this is really kind of the key issue here. They're not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, not regulated by anyone. this could be an excuse for not getting involved by the FCA, but it's not a legitimate one in my view, because building societies are authorised and supervised by the FCA. They are required to sign up to the FCA's principles for business, and they have to honour those principles in respect of everything that they do. They should behave appropriately. And in making effectively untrue statements to elderly and vulnerable clients in order to get them to invest in these schemes.
This is what the building societies did, you're saying?
Exactly. They were spectacularly in breach of the principles of business. In fact, I suspect the majority of the principles were breached. Now, when that happens, the FCA does have the right to investigate and to enforce. And one of the ways the FCA can enforce against a firm is to order it to pay redress to the victims.
Mark's organisation, Transparency Task Force, is a campaign group aiming to promote reform in the financial sector. In summer 2022, it joined a prominent group of MPs to investigate the role of building societies in introducing customers to the trusts that ended up under the control of Philips Trust Corporation. In summer 2023, evidence, including the testimony of victims, was passed to the FCA, which has been reviewing it ever since. Since they've got your evidence from that investigation, what do you think they're going to do now?
So I wish I knew, Angela. I hope that they're going to say that the right thing is, for the people who had only a property in there, they'll be paid the money that they spent on setting up the trusts, and they will also be paid what it cost them to undo them, get the properties back. But I also think the biggest issue, the really big issue, is the £44.2 million. That's the elephant in the room.
Ian, one of the things that I think we discover very often when we're talking about financial situations like this is that often the victims are too embarrassed to admit that they have been taken in by this sort of scheme. Is this something that you have found? And if so, what would you say to people in that position?
My answer to them is, don't feel stupid. You went to an organisation, the building society, that you trusted. You could do no more than that. So please, if there still are people out there that need support, talk to your children, join the group, in a Facebook group, and there's a lot of support and help out there. So remember, you're not on your own and you're no way stupid.
Yeah, thank you both very much indeed for joining us, and let's hope the Financial Conduct Authority do come up with something a bit more positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
We put Mark's points to the Building Societies Association, which told us that it's sympathetic to the difficult situation faced by Philips Trust clients, but the small number of building societies, which introduced a very small number of customers to other organisations, would not have been involved in the product advice or sales advice for the products those customers went on to purchase from those third-party organisations. The Financial Conduct Authority, meanwhile, reiterated that companies like Philips Trust Corporation are exempted from regulation by legislation, warning that its normal protections, therefore, aren't in place. However, as regards building societies' involvement, it added that it is seeking to clarify exactly what happened and will provide further information as soon as it can.
Well, I have to say that was quite a story to end the programme on, and I personally just want to wish everybody who's been caught up in that case the very best of luck, trying to get the justice that they really deserve.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're quite right. Well, we're right behind you every step of the way, so do keep fighting. And it's also a reminder that the story all started with an email to us here at Off Britain. So please do keep sending them in.
But I'm afraid that's all from us for now. We will be bringing you more of your stories and the very best expert advice very soon. Until then, though, thank you for joining us today, and from everyone on the team here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
It's the